The Israeli military says an unidentified drone has hit the city of Eilat. It landed inside the southern Israeli port, hitting a civilian building. Authorities say it caused light damage and no injuries. The source of the missile launch is unknown. Yemen's Houthi rebels claimed responsibility for an attack on Eilat last week. And Houthi armed forces say they've launched ballistic missiles at Eilat in southern Israel. A spokesman for the armed forces says its operation was in response to continued Israeli aggression in Gaza.
Our armed forces have launched a number of ballistic missiles on different sensitive targets of the Israeli regime on the southern occupied territories, including military targets in the Eilat area. The operation has been successful in hitting targets directly, although the enemy is hiding this fact. Our armed forces will continue their military operations in support of the oppressed Palestinian people until the Israeli aggression against our people in Gaza stops and Palestinians are victorious.
Plenty more ahead on the news hour, including an Iraqi airbase used by U.S. forces comes under attack on a day that saw the most widespread series of strikes targeting American assets in Iraq since the war on Gaza began. Fourteen Palestinians have been killed in one of the biggest raids in the West Bank this year and the biggest since October 7th. Israel's military says it was targeting armed Palestinian fighters in Jenin. The military used bulldozers to rip up main roads as a form of collective punishment. Bernard Smith reports from Jenin.
In the narrow streets of Jenin's crowded refugee camp, Israeli soldiers and Palestinian gunmen fight street to street and house to house. Explosives are used to punch walls into homes so soldiers can cut through them into alleyways and take on the Palestinian fighters. Tens of thousands of people live amidst the fighting. Then the military calls in its machinery for collective punishment. The bulldozers rip up the tarmac on the main streets, damaging water mains and electricity cables below. It's a new type of collective punishment that Israel has recently been inflicting on Palestinians in the West Bank.
Roads, houses and infrastructure. Any picture of a martyr annoys them. They would instantly knock off a wall that has a picture of a martyr, or a shop door, or a roundabout. They take it out on anything. The aim is to create damage.
Raids have long been a fact of life for Palestinians living under occupation. Before October the 7th, they averaged 12 a day across the West Bank, but now they average 40 a day. This raid on Jenin was the biggest there's been since the Hamas attack on Israel. And the Israeli military says it found an underground tunnel with primed explosives.
Israel will always say that it's targeting what it calls Palestinian terrorists, but here they'll tell you that the violence and ferocity of these raids is something new. Maybe it's an opportunity to deal with unfinished business and weaken Palestinian fighting groups as much as possible, while everyone else is focused on what's happening in Gaza. Bernard Smith, Al Jazeera, Jenin, in the occupied West Bank.
Well, earlier I spoke to Al Jazeera senior political analyst Marwan Bishara, and he says the occupied West Bank could gradually implode, given the West's lack of motivation to stop Israel.
We could now say that Israel's war on Gaza is Israel's war on Palestine. What has been in the past month a focus zero in on Gaza, pounding Gaza, killing people in Gaza, destroying its infrastructure, is slowly but surely moving to the West Bank. Of course, the West Bank is a much bigger territory and much more dispersed. And the Israelis are starting to give an example of Jenin, or to make an example of Jenin, which probably they will try and render it like Gaza. They're going to be pounding it, they're going to be occupying it, they're going to be killing a lot of people in Jenin. For a long time now, like 20 years ago, in 2022, they committed a massacre there. And for them, even 20 years prior, Jenin was also a symbol of resistance. So I think they're going to continue throughout the West Bank. We have the army that is proliferating throughout the villages and towns, including Ramallah, the so-called de facto capital of the Palestinian Authority. And in parallel to that, the settlers, the illegal settlers, the violent illegal settlers are taking advantage with the support of the military, attacking residents, farmers, women, men, children, attacking cars, properties, and so on and so forth.
And so much so that we've had not just the United Nations, but the United States express concern, alarm about settler attacks against Palestinians, and yet nothing is happening to stop that.
Absolutely. Actually, if I remember correctly, I heard the Secretary of State saying violent extremism in the West Bank, not even naming who are the violent extremists in the West Bank. It is really unfortunate that the United States is not using any leverage. And as you and I were speaking earlier, if there's a will, there's a way. But clearly there is no will on the part of the Biden administration to do something. They boxed themselves behind the Netanyahu government, repeating the falsehoods and the sound bites of the Netanyahu government, and basically being part and parcel to the ongoing massacres and genocide, both in Gaza and in the West Bank. So something got to give here, because if they don't, I think the West Bank is bound to implode.
While Israel conducts its bombing campaign and ground offensive in Gaza, Palestinian Israelis in Israel who've been voicing support for the territory are being attacked and arrested, and prominent politicians are among those detained. Vera Saleme has more.
This Palestinian Israeli woman posted support for Palestinian fighters in Gaza on WhatsApp. The Israeli police arrested her and accused her of having links to a terrorist organization. Former Knesset member Mohammed Barakeh tried to protest against Israel's war on the Strip. He was detained for questioning, along with 2 other former members of parliament. Rights groups say this is part of a clampdown by Israel on anyone showing support for Palestinians.
This is clearly illegal. The decision of the High Court that was issued yesterday said such protests does not need an approval from the police. The court even criticized the head of the police, who said Arabs are prohibited from protesting.
Palestinians Israelis have attempted to hold protests condemning the war in Gaza, but the Israeli police have dispersed them each and every time. These Israelis attempted to storm a college in Israel where Palestinian Israeli students sheltered. They chanted death to Arabs and verbally attacked the students. The Israeli police eventually evacuated the students. The trauma of the attack remains. Since the beginning of the war, police have questioned more than 370 Palestinian Israelis over social media posts they say violate public peace and incite terror. Internationally acclaimed Palestinian singer Dalal Abu Amne was arrested after she posted a prayer online with the emoji of the Palestinian flag. Israeli police said her post was insightful. More than 100 people have been arrested on similar grounds, including university students and minors. At least 44 have been charged, according to Adala Legal Center. Dozens of Palestinians say they have lost their jobs in Israel since the start of the war, and students have been expelled from universities for posting comments online in support of Palestinians in Gaza. Palestinian Israelis say they are facing growing discrimination and worry about how they can show solidarity with those in Gaza if a simple social media post can lead to their arrest. Vera Salema, Al Jazeera.
Still ahead on the NewsHour, representatives from more than